Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hey friends, and welcome to another weekly wrap up. And today we're going to talk about the 8 books that I read this week. 3 of which were like, I needed to finish them from last week because the week before, I was really working my way through one of these books in particular, and it just delayed me for a lot of the other ones. But I'm very excited to talk about what we have going on, or what I had going on, and it's going to be great. And I do still have a tiny little hangover of a cold. It's mostly gone. You know, trying to drown it out with Diet Dr. Pepper and Diet 7-Up. So don't mind me if I need to take lots of extra sips. But, yeah. What a great week, actually. I mean, I was really pounding about this last week, so I'm excited to talk about them with you. Before we dive in, I just want to say a warm welcome to Kat G. Fan, who joined my channel memberships. Thank you so much. As YouTube continues to do whatever the hell it would like to, I continue to be humbled and just so thankful for everyone who supports me in all the different ways. You know, whether that is liking this video, sharing it with someone who you think might want to hear my thoughts or recommendations, or you just watching and enjoying it and giving it a like or hyping the video or being a subscriber here. All of that helps so much. But today, anyway, a little extra thank you to my new channel member. All right, let's get into this here. So the first one that I finished up was The Fall Before Flight by L.M. Halloran. Okay, this one, it very loosely connects with the other book in this series, which this one actually came first. So like, these say they're in a series, but I struggled to really find the connection to it. And I guess at one point I wasn't even really looking. They both deal with like therapy, just in very different ways. And The Dark Before Light, that one actually involved like BDSM used in therapy. And that was not what this one was. This one was more of your, shall we say, kind of straight up forbidden relationship between a woman who is at this kind of like 30-day intensive, like she calls it daycare for grown-ups, but not quite. But it is like this pretty intensive therapy situation for 30 days that is basically for rich kids. And we run into quite a few people that are here because their parents want to keep it hush-hush, but they do genuinely love their loved one who's here. And our heroine, she has been through a lot, so much so that she doesn't even remember everything. So this one was kind of a secret amnesia story, if we say it that way, because it is a first-person narrative and it doesn't have dual POV. So this was narrated by Samantha Brentmore, and it says with guest Austin Stone, but Austin Stone, we only get his POV in the epilogue once once the couple's already together, because not to spoil everything, but one of the reasons this woman is at this program is that she has some diagnoses that even she doesn't know about that came from an event, which I will tell you what the event was, because it is a triggering event. So I'll tell you what it is. But this event caused her to be injured and caused a lot of trauma. And when she woke up, and she remembered who she was, but she didn't remember the traumatic event, even with gentle prompting, her family was told not to push her, but then she wouldn't know that, right? This isn't the case of think of some other amnesia events. A thing that authors often use is that the person's already dating someone or they're already married to someone. And so when they forget who they are, we have someone who's already extremely invested in them remembering, and we'll have them remembering flashes of things and whatever. Now, in the case of our heroine, I won't tell you who, but there are some people she has met before that she doesn't remember because of her trauma. but it wasn't in a romantic way at all, which I thought was an interesting choice by the author. I will say, to have this be kind of a secret amnesia trope, which would make sense if you were reading only a first-person point of view account. How would she know she has amnesia and she's blocking out this event? And the way that her personality has changed just a little bit by not having that full information, we don't know any different about her. And her therapist, who maybe just seems like a normal type of therapist, but of course is going to be our love interest, he does know about those things that she doesn't know. And the way that he slowly tries to get her to share them, I thought was very well done. So yeah, the event, I will say, that happens, spoiler here, but trigger warning, is our heroine actually loses a pregnancy, and she does have some self-harming that happens as well. So she has blocked out the loss of the pregnancy. So that is, not only is there the trauma of the event, which we will eventually see, but also the fact that she has to then remember it. And that's part of why, like, her family and this therapist, like, they know what's coming to her. So there's this a bit like, we don't want to tiptoe around her and treat her like glass, but also if she was already in kind of a self-harming frame of mind before, what's it going to be like when eventually this truth comes out of what she lost? But this book is also broken into kind of two parts. And her therapy journey isn't the entire book. Let's just say that. And that is actually where this book, like, now that I've told you a bit of the setup, I gave this book a 4-star. It was like a 3 on the spice scale. I ended up feeling, because this was first person point of view, though I understand the reason for it, though I understand the purpose for it, and I enjoyed it, this book ended up feeling more like a women's fiction by the end. Because without the hero's point of view, like, even dropped in there little bits, I don't really know enough about him at all. And this story is solely focused on the heroine. And so the hero only comes into it when it's relevant to her. So yes, he shares parts of his life with us and we get to know him, particularly in the second bit of the book when the therapy part of it isn't the highlight anymore. But I didn't know him, like, at all. Like, he's a single dad. He is very into the heroine. Again, there are connections to how he knows her outside of being her therapist that she doesn't remember. But I think people would be hard-pressed to prove me wrong that the romance is not the full focus of this story. It's her mental health. And it should be. It's a beautiful story in that aspect. But I am a romance reviewer. That's what I'm here to do. I still think there's a lot that's very moving in this. But what was different between this one and The Dark Before Light, which again, these are in a series, like, that was also therapist. That one is dual person, first person point of view, and both the therapist and her client, they both have journeys that they're working through. And it's very clear that the love they have for each other is changing and healing both of them. Okay. So again, those of you, my friends who've read both, maybe you'll agree with me. You'll see what I'm talking about. This is just that place where, like, I just call it as I see it. This, to me, was very clearly a women's fiction. It's a journey that, what is even the heroine's name here? Amelia or Leah, I think is what, or Emmy. I can't remember which name she likes. Sheila doesn't like to be called Amelia. I think she likes to be called Leah or Mia. It's Mia. There we go. I should have known that because it's Princess Diaries. Amelia. She goes by Mia. What part does Leo really play besides an instrument to help her get through what she's going through? And then when he does have a struggle later on, we don't get to see it because we don't have his point of view at all. So there is a part of this story where I know Leo's working through something, but we only get to see it when he wants to talk to the heroine about it, which he doesn't always want to talk to the heroine about it. And if I had got to see his inner struggle and what it was about, that'd be great. The only thing I can think of is that the author doesn't want to take away from the story that the heroine has, which then means she's the focus of the story. The story is about her journey only, which means this is a women's fiction with a romance in it. I just call it as I see it. It's the same I've said of, you know, a Kennedy Ryan that I read a few years back that came out. That one even has dual first-person point of view, but the hero doesn't go on a journey. The hero's already, like, all set, you know, like, he's already went through his journey, and it's just the heroine who's going on one. So, just because the romance is beautiful, it isn't a romance. So, I've spent enough time talking about it, but that's why I gave this one 4 stars, is because it wasn't a romance. It was a women's fiction with a beautiful romance, but only talked about how the romance affects the heroine, because we never have the hero's point of view, so we don't know. Up. I finished reading Empire of the Dawn. So, there's not much I can say about this one because it is wrapping up a trilogy, and all the things I love the most about this one are spoilers. But as I have done in the past, sorry, my shelf is bothering me today. Let me give you just a bit of a backstory on this book. So this is book 3 and the final book in the trilogy. So yes, you can now binge the entire series. And this is a like grimdark paranormal fantasy. This isn't romance. There are a couple romances you can see throughout the story, but you're not promised any HEAs for any of those, so be prepared. We also have a cast of characters who, thankfully, I can say their names here because he has a dramatis personae at the beginning, but there's Gabriel de Leon, who's the last Silver Saint, which means he, like, fights against the vampires who have, like, taken over the world since the sun has stopped shining full on, which means, you know, the vampires have been able to take over a lot. There is Dior Lachance, who is the daughter of a streetwalker and is said to be the savior, the one who can end this, you know, darkness. There's Celine Castilla, who is Gabriel's half-sister, who was turned into a vampire at a young age and kind of hates Gabriel, so she's kind of an enemy here. We have Phoebe A. Dancer, who is a lioness shifter person who is trying to just help our gang out. And then we have just a bunch of other supporting characters, but those are the ones that I care about the most. Those are the ones I consider the main characters of the story. And the way I explain this is that the way the story is set up is that Gabriel has been captured. That's why he's called the Last Silver Saint. And he's been in prison, and he's being waited to be executed. But he's going to be executed, supposedly, in a way that all of the, like, major vampires still alive will get to witness it because they all hate him. He's killed their spawn/children. He's made things difficult for them. He's even killed a few of them a few times, even though they're immortal and they're still around. And so before he dies, there is this, like, vampire empress queen lady who wants his story before they kill him off. And then we have Jean-Francois, who is the historian who is taking down his last account. And so, yeah, that is what the story we're reading from the beginning is. Gabriel in his cell, and he's telling the story. So this entire story is told, like, in quotation marks because he's telling it to someone. And that's just something to remember. There'll be parts where it breaks because the story starts in, like, third person of Jean-Francois going in to meet him. And then once the story starts, it becomes like a I, me, my, because Gabriel's telling it. But if Gabriel tells a particularly, like, brutal part of the story, or let's say a sexy part of the story, Jean-Francois might break in and be like, is that really how it happened? Or, oh, you dog doing this or whatever. So there'll be these moments of break in the story. Like it would be if you were telling I don't want to call them friends because they're not friends, but like if you were telling your friend a story and they break in and they call you out on like, was the fish really that big? And be like, hey, you're asking my story. And that's how I heard it. Okay. And that's how it begins back in Empire of the Vampire. And there'll be points where Gabriel maybe tries to escape, or where Gabriel shares some information that, maybe the guy doesn't believe. Sorry, my brain. There's so many names in here. Anyway, and part of the reason that he's also very depressed in prison is that there was this girl, Dior Lachance, the one I mentioned, who I said is supposed to be the savior. And we're told from the beginning that she's dead. And he's lost. Again, they're going to kill him. And they want to record the history because the vampires apparently want the history written down. And that is what is happening. But as we get closer to Gabriel's execution, we get closer to what really happened to Dior, how everything really blew up in Gabriel's face. And yeah, that's really what it is. Without me saying more about it, it's really hard to not like want to say everything. Let me see if there's also artwork throughout. That's why I highly recommend the physical book, or the ebook I think has the colored photos maybe. I'm not sure on that. I think it might. I know there are editions out there with the colored graphics inside. I'm really jealous of that. But yeah, it's so good. So I really can't say too much about this because I would absolutely spoil the whole thing if I do. But a couple things I'll say is that I ended up giving this book 6 stars. And the same way that I did with the Jade Legacy series, it's really about the fact that the whole series is a 6-star experience for me. To me, they're all really kind of one book. Yes, they have rising and falling in each one. I'm not saying that. But Empire of the Vampire, Empire of the Damned, and Empire of the Dawn, they're all one thing. And there's so much that pays off in the end that we started way in the beginning. And when I finished this book, as devastating and hard as it was, I immediately wanted to go back to the beginning because there's so many things set in motion. I do want to talk just briefly a spoiler. I'm not going to go full in, but I'm going to set the book down here and talk about spoilers for just a couple of minutes. Again, not spoiling the entire thing, but giving my thoughts on the ending. And the only way I can do that is in a spoiler to even say it. But I give this trilogy 6 stars. Highly recommend the audiobooks. This is narrated by, I didn't even put the narrators in here. I'm sorry. I will put them down below or put them on the screen. They're fantastic, but just a couple spoilery thoughts. So, spoilers for this. I loved the convention that was used to end this book off, which, again, just kind of spoilers, but not. To me, this story has a happy ending. Now, what's crazy is Jay will tell you he doesn't believe in happily ever afters, but that's because and I'm not saying this is wrong, but if you listen to him, even on tour, there's a clip that Crystal shared where he says, is it a happily ever after when the cost is so high and the things you went through and the pain that you go through, it's not really happily ever after. It's do you survive to get to the end? And in my opinion, in a story like this, yes, it is. And as I mentioned, there are a few romances throughout. And 2 of the romances I love, they get a happily ever after, in my opinion. And again, if you've read this book now, there is a quote unquote twist ending that I'm smiling about so much. I don't know when I'll be able to talk spoilers about this book because in no way can I just do a standalone review of this book. I would just do a bad job just in general. There's so many names. There's so much going on. There's characters that have 2 or 3 fucking names, so they're really hard to keep track of. But you know, I'm just not going to make a standalone spoiler thing for it. So I kind of got to mention it here. But the twist ending I fucking loved because I am a big baby, and there is a convention used at the end of this book that I think once you finish it, in hindsight, it is pretty obvious. It could feel cheap, and I'm sure there's people who will say that, who will feel that. I am not one, because I'm a big baby, and I didn't want a lot of the things that had happened to be true. I didn't want them to be true. And one important thing to remember, you know, again, in the spoiler part of this, if you're listening to this in a non-spoiler, like, it is going to ruin some things. Remember the convention of the story that we're using. Gabriel and eventually Celine, his half-sister, are telling this vampire their story. He only has so much way to, like, reference or double check their work, let's just say. So, you know, there's a term we like to use these days that's a bit overused at this point, but still true. And it's called fake news. And I would just like to say there's a lot about this series that if you wanted to be a critic, you could say it's fake news. Or you could say you were told the game from page 1. You were told the game. And it's kind of a mark of how good Gabriel is, aka Jay Kristoff is, that he makes you believe the game quite a bit. And when that card is turned, you know, when the 3-card Monty is played and the queen gets turned over, you were like, oh my God, I saw you put that queen there. And I didn't believe my own eyes. So anyway, again, there'll be other people who probably analyze this much deeper than me, and that's fantastic. But for me, being a romance reader who will always give Jay Kristoff a chance, even though I know he's just a ravenous wolf ready to rip my heart out, in this case, well, let's just say he coughed my heart back up and gave it back and was like, see, here, it's still here. That was a really interesting example to make. And because he did that, I loved this story. And I know for a lot of people, the cost, it won't feel like there was a cost to it. It won't feel this or whatever. And maybe they won't feel that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I mean, I don't know. But for me, Empire of the Dawn was painful. It hurt. It was hard to read. It took me 5 days, which I know isn't a terrible long time, but like I could have finished this in 2 days, you know, but I made myself slow down because I was scared of things, and I also didn't want it to be over too fast. So it took me 5 days to read it. I loved it. It hurt me. I cried. And then I laughed and danced with joy at the end of this. I'm not even kidding you. I was listening to it, and when a certain reveal was made, I stood up from my chair at my puzzle table and like pumped my fists. But I was going to say one other thing before I like move on from the spoiler part of this and go on to the next book, is that when the game was given away to me, let me just say that, or I suspected it, there's a certain death that happens that I've been afraid of the whole time. Like, since book 2, I've been like, please, 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 please don't let this one die. Which is always dangerous in any dark story, particularly by Jay Kristoff. I was like, no, 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 no. And when that death happened, I text my sister, who has no idea about these books. Maybe she'll read them someday. But I text my sister and I was like, this character just died. My only hope is a certain thing. And then when I got to the end of the book, I was like, it was that thing. And I was really happy about it. So anyway, that is my feeling about this trilogy as a whole, is that it is a 6-star trilogy for me. His writing is fantastic. The emotions it whips up is fantastic. And like, just guttural and painful and all the things. And I know that this series won't work for everyone, but for me, it works. And again, even as a romance reader, who, you guys know I say it all the time, I read 1, maybe 2 non-romances a year. This worked for me just for all the other stuff going on too. But it is brutal. Okay, time to move along. Let's get back into romance stuff. Next up, I had an arc of Jensen by Rhea Morris Edwards, which is now out. This is book 4 in the Sovereign Mountain series. And this one was, of course, about Jensen and our heroine, who we haven't met before, but her name is Della. And she is only, I think, 23. She's a single mom, and her child is in trouble. Okay? And she gets sent by a mutual acquaintance of Jensen and her, who Jensen's never met her, but this mutual acquaintance sends Della to Jensen because she's like, he may be able to help. And so you should go find him and convince him to help you. And she chooses to do that by seducing him. The only thing is she also gets seduced along the way. And once she seduces him, and he's already thinking about, how can I keep her? What can I do to keep this woman? Well, she tells him what's going on and what she needs, and basically begs him to help her save her son, who's being kept from her by her ex-husband, who basically married her as a child bride and like forced her into a lot of this situation to begin with. And then when she escaped him, he kept her child and didn't let her take her child with, which is awful. And Jensen, though he feels very bitter and feels very betrayed, he obviously understands why she did it. And he not only is already so obsessed with her that he can't just give her up, but he does want to help her. And so he's willing to go back to the place that he escaped and try to help her win her son back. So I really enjoyed this one. I know that was like a weird explanation for it. I'm sorry. My brain today is just not, my brain is not braining, as they say. I don't know. That was weird. But though this one was like, oh, this one was so painful in some aspects, this one also felt very different than the previous 3. Not only because it didn't take place in Sovereign Mountain, it took place in Appalachia, however we say it. And our heroine and Jensen are both from that area. So one of my only kind of issues is I'm like, well, this one wasn't like Sovereign Mountain, you know, and I really wanted to see more from the other characters because that's a big part of the series, is how like interconnected they are. But it also made this one feel new and exciting at the same time. So I really enjoyed it. The kink in this one, there's a lot of like sadomasochism in here, and they do both kind of take turns with that. There is, you know, all the normal sexy things you'd expect from Rhea in here. You know, we got some anal, some breath play, some praise and degradation, spanking, impact play, lots of squirting. She loves squirting. She's never met a woman she didn't want to squirt in a book. I will say that. And there was also the trigger warnings of, you know, she's basically a child bride. Her mother basically handed her over to this animal. There was stealthing, which I've said this before too. It's been a while, but I did have someone request a video on stealthing once, which if you don't know, that's when someone removes the condom during sex and doesn't tell you. It's a taboo aspect to it. But I have only read that like twice in a book. It's usually done by not the hero. Like, yes, it's done by the MC sometimes in dark romance, but often it's usually done by the abuser. And I just, honestly, that's one that like, I just really don't like. But that's rape. You know, if you take off a condom midway through and someone didn't have a choice, like that's what happens to our heroine when she is literally like 18 years old, 19 years old. Her much older, controlling husband gets her pregnant without her knowledge so that he can have even more control. But yeah, Jensen's gonna rescue her from that, and it's gonna be great. So I gave that one 5 stars because honestly, it was almost a 6-star read. It really is the fact that like there's nothing like Sovereign Mountain in this one. Like we're in there for like, I don't know, 5 chapters in the beginning and then like 1 chapter at the end. And I wanted us to be. one of the things that Rhea also announced, so we have Jack that's left in this series. Jack Russell will be getting his book next year. But she's also going to be doing a spin-off that's a Mafia series. And you meet that character, probably that couple, because I mean, I would assume she's going to give us that couple's romance in this one too. So I really liked this one. I've been trying to kind of rank them, and like it's hard because obviously Sovereign is still number one, and then like Deacon is like right underneath it. This probably ties with Deacon for me, and as I've said many times, Weston, I don't really care for Weston. That one's at the bottom for me, but I think I still like Deacon more, but only because that one takes place on Sovereign Mountain. So I gave them both 5 stars, and they're pretty equal as for like content and for what the BDSM is doing in these ones. I really like that. Okay, next up, I had an ALC of Risky Match by J.D. Carruthers. I've read one other book by J.D. Carruthers, which I believe does connect with this, because I think the brother of the heroine was from that one I read, but they're not in the same like series, so I don't know. She kind of lists hers as standalones, the other ones, but this one's the first book in a new series. And this one was narrated in dual format by James Joseph and Stephanie Nemeth Parker, and this is a like British one, and this was from Must Love Audio as well. Or no, it wasn't. Must Love Audio did offer ARCs for this one, but I got it from Home Cooked Books promo, so I got it from. So this one is about tennis and royal spies, so fun mix up in here for sure. So yeah, this one is about Brianna, who is a royal, and she's actually a part of this program where the royals who are not in line for the throne can basically become kind of like a 007 spy, right? So the spares are allowed to do this. And so she has been trained for many, many years to be able to be a spy. And she's done a few very like small missions, basically. And one of the reasons why there is this royal espionage is that there's places the royals get invited into that other people won't. So why not have your royals working for your government or working for the good of the people and all that jazz? But Brianna is also a tennis player. And because of her royal duties and safety situation, she's not able. So I'll tell you, I don't understand the rules of tennis at all. And I'm not trying to learn for this one. But from what I gather is like she's not able to compete in enough like other matches to be able to qualify for Wimbledon. She has to be invited to Wimbledon. And at the beginning of this book, she thinks she is finally done. Well, at the beginning of this book, she has a one-night stand with Blake. They have a one-night stand with one another. And then they don't see one another for 2 years. So now fast forward. And Blake has lost at Wimbledon a few times. He actually has lately been getting performance anxiety. And he always gets to go to Wimbledon. But again, he's choked there the last 2 times. And he goes there for singles, but this year his sponsor forces him to also do doubles, and our heroine gets invited to Wimbledon, but only if she plays doubles. So who's going to get paired together with these two? Now, partly why she is getting put in doubles is because of, there is a mission she is supposed to go on in which she's told that Blake and or his team may be responsible for smuggling precious antiquities in the form of coins out of the country. And so she's made his partner because she's supposed to spy on him. And no one else really knows, though, that she has had a one-night stand with him before, which makes it both easier and harder to spy on him. It makes it easier because he already kind of has a base level of trust for her because they had a great connection when they had their one-night stand. But it also makes it more difficult because she's like, but he's such a great guy. What would he have to do with this, you know? So, anywho, then this event mostly takes place during Wimbledon, and we have first, he doesn't want to be a part of doubles, so he's actually planning to kind of like phone it in and like maybe play well once, but then just like if they lose, he's still got the singles to go on. But for her, she really needs them not to lose because the longer she can stay, not only does she want to be there to win, like she, again, is a competitor in tennis, she wants to win, but also the longer that she makes it, the further she can like look into him and everything. So this was fun. It was relatively low stakes, even for being a spy novel. I mean, it has to do with like coins being smuggled. The biggest issue I had with this is that Blake is kind of an asshole, which I didn't care for. Like, I think it's supposed to be his sports anxiety that's ramping him up to do this, but he will just get so pissy about random things. He acts like a child. And Brianna, even though she is a princess, and not that she would be stuck up about it, but like there is a base level of respect to being a princess. Ozu, like I'm just saying it, like we know it. But she has to kind of swallow a lot of it because she needs to be on his good side. And so there are times where she would just tell him to go shove it, but she kind of has to play it up because like she needs to be around him. And particularly something that really offended me was honestly the ending when he finds out what's going on. Like, I don't know. He's just a twat to me. Like, I was really annoyed with him at certain parts of this. But I rounded it up to a 4-star because it also was a really easy listen. I liked the bit of suspense. I just didn't like when he was being a prick. I liked Brianna a lot, actually. I enjoyed her a lot. I thought she was smart. She was kind. She loved tennis. She was good at it. So I rounded it to a 4, but it could have been better. Let's just say that. Blake could have behaved himself better. But again, it was fun. The audiobook was good. If you come across this one and want to try it, I don't think you'll hate it. If I were to do another royalty recommendation video, I'd recommend it there. And because it's tennis, that's the other reason too. Haven't read another tennis romance yet. So cool setup for sure. Okay, next up was one of my Patreon reads. Because as I said, I was horrible in October and I just couldn't focus on them. So it took me a very long time to get to this one. And I'm very sorry to my patron that it took me so long. But I read Heartache and Hope by Jay McLean. This was my first book by Jay McLean, and this is the first in a duet. So I'm going to be sparing about what I say because I was warned by the patron too. They're like, this one has a cliffhanger. I already have book 2 ready, and I'm not going to take as long to read book 2 as I did to read book 1 because I think reading this story really tightly together will be good because it's a type of cliffhanger where we basically just like stopped the story, especially from what I can tell because I don't think there's a huge time jump or anything between the two. I don't know. I could be wrong. So the story just like stopped there in a really dramatic place. So a few things about this one though is that this takes place in high school, and at the start of this book, they are like both 17. So right off the bat, I'm just telling you, and as I like told my patron, like this isn't inherently anything wrong with the book. It's just, this is like YA, basically. This one was YA because there wasn't anything super sexual, which there shouldn't have been. Let me be clear, there shouldn't have been. But it was even written like a YA. It had the makings of kind of like a Sarah Dessen though, of like they both have some really emotional things going on. Very interesting family dynamics, like the hero and his dad, they're on their own. The hero plays basketball, and the heroine is his next door neighbor. So this is Ava and Connor. Now, Ava's mother is a war veteran who was a POW. She was severely, like, assaulted and abused there, and she came back scarred and missing part of one arm, and her husband, like, I believe leaves her, which was her second husband, if I'm right, because it's Ava's stepdad who leaves, I believe. But her stepbrother sticks around because he loves them, and he's really kind of the only adult, though he is a young adult, who's there to help Ava through this, because her mother during the day has carers because she can't be left alone. But at night, it's basically just Ava and then her stepbrother, when he's around, looking after her mom. So she and her mom has had episodes in public before, making the whole town pretty judgy and a bunch of pricks, honestly. Like, so be prepared for that. It's just really hard to see happen to her. But Connor and Ava, as I said, are next door neighbors. At school, they kind of get off to a bad start to begin with, but it's very clear they're immediately very attracted to each other. Connor's dad actually really like warns him away from Ava at one point, because he's like, that family, it's not that he thinks that Ava is bad, it's just he knows how tough that like life is, and like what Ava's mom, it like, he doesn't understand what she's going through, but he like understands the situation a little bit and just knows that it's not a good situation for teens to be falling in love around and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm kind of just wandering all over the place. But Ava's whole thing is that she can't love anyone because she's going to hold them back, because she's going to be stuck taking care of her mom, and she loves her mom, but some days her mom doesn't even remember her. Her mom's TBI and trauma just make her, she can be volatile. She can hurt Ava sometimes. But Ava doesn't have like the right, they don't have the right insurance to be able to give her mom the perfect care that she needs. So there's just like a lot on Ava's shoulders. And what I love about Connor, though, is that he thinks Ava is his endgame, and he thinks that really early on. And not to spoil this whole book, but it is the first part of a duet. I don't know what happens next. He decides that the best thing he can do is be the best at basketball he can be, because one day he's going to be taking care of Ava and her mom. He just believes that. That's what he wants. And to do that, he has to get a scholarship, and he has to make the pros. And that then leads, though, is like when you're a teenager and you have a goal that big, you don't have time to just like be a boyfriend. And so all of this is just a lot of pressure on some very young people who are having to make really big life decisions when they're 17. And that leads to stress, and it leads to pain, and it leads to just a lot of heaviness. So this first part of the duet, I did give 3.5 stars for two reasons. One is that I had to skip every intimate thing in here, which there's not a lot, but I know we can debate. There's not some magic line that all of a sudden makes people over 18 like it okay to read it. I really wouldn't want to read it when they're still 18 either. I don't want to read sexual things between what I appear to be children now. I just do, okay? I used to laugh when booktubers who are a bit older than me would say that about like the new adult range, because I don't always feel that way in college or whatever. But when they're clearly 17 and they're still like are like kids, it's not that they can't be having sex. It's not that they won't be having those urges, because I do remember those, but I don't want to read about it. I just don't. And this one, like, it is like YA. This first book, at least, like, is YA. Like I said, it reads like a Sarah Dessen. So that was just hard. And secondly, there's just so much crap in these kids' lives. Like, it sucks. But as I said to my patron, and I'm saying it again here now, I know that this first book was supposed to suck because it's the first half of a duet. And I have book 2, and I'm going to read it like very soon, because I still remember everything from this one, and it was good. The writing was good. These characters are good. I'm just saying my enjoyment level was at like a 3.5, because it was hard to read a lot of parts, both when there would be like steamy stuff, which again, this author isn't like over exaggerating that. I didn't want to read any time they started talking about their body parts. I was like, nope, I don't want to. And then also it was just heavy. It was very heavy. But I fully believe this author, just based on the writing I read in this one, that I'm going to, like, part 2 is going to be what I want it to be. So, yeah. That was Heartache and Hope. Next up, I read Dreaming of a Cowboy Christmas by Anne Einerson. Real easy to talk about this one here. This was an arc for her book that just came out. That is her Christmas book this year. And I always have a soft spot for her Christmas books, because that's kind of how Anne, it's not how she started. She had books before. But when she first did If You Give a Grump a Holiday Wish List, that was like her first holiday one. And it was so fun. And then she did a holiday novel last year. And then this one, she's sticking with her cowboy world she's building up, which she did have. What was book 1? Wrangled Love, and coming up is going to be Lassoed Love, I think, or something. But this one does connect with that world. And we have Shep and Noelle. And Noelle is in her 20s. She's actually a podcaster and influencer, which love it, not going to lie. And she thinks she is renting this sweet little cabin in the mountains for a little holiday break. That's what she thinks she's going to be doing. But when she shows up at this holiday, she finds out she's basically been duped, that this wasn't actually an Airbnb or a vacation rental, and she's actually driven to someone's house, a cabin in the woods, which belongs to Shep. And of course, when she arrives there, the storm is already too heavy for her to leave. And now she is snowed in with this grumpy cowboy who is 45, I think he is. And she is basically snowed in there with him and his animals, and for the Christmas time she's going to be there with him, and they're going to fall in love there. And I love this. There was also a fun, sexy part of this, is that she's a podcaster, and she doesn't necessarily like focus on like sex things, but it basically sounds like she is going to be sponsored by a sex toy company. Sounds familiar to me. And she's been given these toys to test out before she does her before she's sponsored by them, which again, hello, done that before. So that's definitely fun when Shep comes across her toys and everything. So this was really sweet. And of course, after they spend this like holiday week together, she reignites his passion to be in love, makes him realize he doesn't have to give up on her dream of wanting a family and a wife, and they're going to fall in love over the Christmas time. So this was perfect. It's a little longer than a novella. But it did get nice and spicy in here as well. We even had some anal and some light daddy kink, and the use of the sex toys, which was fantastic. But yeah, this one was Age Gap, Forced Proximity, Grumpy Sunshine, Small Town, all that good jazz right there. So yeah, I gave that one 4 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the... Next up, I got to read my early copy of Ashes by Claire Kent, which I really can't talk about, but I did my content poll for this one. This will be book 2 in the Apocalyptic Fairy Tales. This one is based on Cinderella, and it's kind of how it's down. She is living, our heroine is Teresa. She's living with her stepmother and stepsister. It is year 36 after Impact. So this one, you know, takes place in one of the cities near the central cities, and we do get introduced, like, I'm just gonna tell you because I'm allowed to, we do get introduced to some characters who are in Devotion, okay, and who will be the stars of Service, which will be coming next year, which was awesome. Okay, awesome. And actually the way it is that Annabelle, who, if you've read Devotion, you'll know who Annabelle is one of the stepsisters to Teresa, but she isn't like the evil stepsister, shall we say. We'll just put it that way, okay? So we get introduced to Annabelle and Ben, and we hear just the briefest bit about possibly the rebellion that's happening in the central cities, or maybe coming for the central cities. So this was great. I loved it. I don't talk about what I rate the books from her. I rate them all 5 stars on Goodreads and leave like thoughts there because this is the author that I work for. But I enjoyed this one so much. There are some great kinky things in here. Not kinky things. Some sexual exploration things in here because these are both virgins. The hero is 30. The heroine is 26. And in the way the culture is now in this time, like, you don't have really sex for pleasure unless you are an elite, which again, that's what Devotion is about. Read that one. And so neither of them have had sex, and they've never even really been told about sex very much. So when these two get married, they obviously know that sex is something they can have now, but truly our heroine knows nothing about it. And so while it's exciting once they start experimenting together, like, if you've read a Claire Kent before, you know that she doesn't just make it so everybody has great sex immediately the very first time they do it. That's not how it goes for people. So, yeah, this one includes some awkward sex, y'all. It includes some awkward sex and sex exploration, which I love reading about. Okay, I know not everyone does, but I do. And so I had a great time with it. But anywho, that one will be coming January 2nd. So as I talked about Tower a bazillion times before it came out, I will definitely do so for Ashes when we get closer to it. But also, if you are interested in an ARC, we will have ARC signups for that coming soon. So, love it. Okay, and then the last book that I finished last night was Pinch by Tia Louise, which was narrated in duet format by Ryan Lee Dunlap and Willa James. And this is the New Bradfords is the series. So this spins off from the Bradford Boys, which was a 5-book series that was about 4 brothers. Well, there was 5 brothers and a sister who their parents had died a few years back. Well, a good amount back. And it was about each of them finding love. And their main sport was football in those ones. But in this second generation, we have Hattie, who she is the daughter of the couple from... was it When We Touch? I don't know. But it's the couple where the mom wanted to be the meteorologist. And the hero was a football player. And they had a one-night stand at one of the siblings' weddings. And then she had the baby and came to see him a year later. Like, that's the one. So Hattie is that baby. Hayden is her name, but like Hattie is what she is. And then our hero, I don't know if he was in another series Tia Louise did. I'm actually interested in finding out if we knew about that family. But our hero here is a hockey player. He actually plays with Maverick, and he's just moved to this town. Our heroine is actually going to college to be a scientist, but they all end up living together. So there's 4 people that end up living together, because there's Gigi, Gavin, and Hayden, who are cousins. They're all first cousins of the Bradfords. And then Gavin ends up staying with them. But see, Gavin and Hayden knew each other from earlier in college. Which when they were like first in college. So the thing is that like this is like graduate school. They are like 30, these two are, and maybe she's not quite 30. I don't know, but they knew each other from back in college, because that is why they had like this like falling out kind of. He dated her friend, and then the friend said that he had cheated on her, and so she's always hated Gavin since then. But like Gavin didn't cheat on this friend. So she has a bad impression of him when they first meet again. And he's bummed by that, because he was super attracted to her, and now neither of them are dating anyone, and he'd really like to date her, and she hates his guts. So we're in a bit of a tricky situation here. But I love this one. This one actually takes place over basically the entire like last school year for the heroine. She is trying to get her doctoral thesis. Is that what she's going for? I don't know. But it's a woman in STEM. We love her. We love her so much. And our hero is playing hockey with Maverick. And these two, they start fooling around around Halloween. And actually, this ends up being an accidental pregnancy. But they have to keep it a secret, because Hattie actually has a scholarship with this like beauty pageant group, and if they find out that she's pregnant and unmarried, like she will lose that scholarship. So that was actually one of my like annoyances with this whole story, is that she's from a really wealthy family, and I know college is expensive no matter who. Like, I definitely know that. But it was made to be by her like such a big deal, and so much so they have to keep the pregnancy a secret, when I'm kind of like, yeah, but maybe someone who doesn't have any family support would have needed that. I don't know. I'm not here to debate that. I'm obviously still in college debt. I know a lot of people are, but we won't talk about it. Okay? But yeah, it's definitely... there are layers to it, let's just say. But overall, I ended up loving it because I love how obsessed Gavin is with their baby, and I love how immediately excited he is about it. I love how excited their families are about it. So this is one where like they have some trouble early on getting on the same page, but there's no third act breakup. There's no other woman drama. There's just these two trying to become parents together, which I love reading. So I gave it 4.5 stars actually, because I liked it a lot. And I gave it, it's 3 on the spice scale. And this is, yeah, a second generation series. The setup for the next one is already there, and I'm excited for that. And yeah, that was it. So there you go. Those are the books that I read this last week, which was wonderful. And let me know what you think about some of them, what you read this week, what you're up to. Again, make sure you like this video, hype this video. I put up 4 videos a week. I also have a Patreon where I share exclusive behind the scene vlogs and all that good stuff. And yeah, that is everything for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.